In this video, we're going to be discussing compound interest. In the previous lessons, we talked about interest and simple interest, and we discovered that interest is an amount of money that you earn when you save or deposit money in a bank or financial institution, or the amount of money that you pay when you borrow money from a financial institution or a bank. Okay, compound interest. So by the end of this video, you should be able to explain the concept of compound interest, and also you need to state and use the compound interest formula to solve questions that involve compound interest. Now, one major difference between compound and simple interest is for compound interest, your principal changes every year. That is, the principal from the amount from the previous year becomes the principal for the new year. So compound interest actually means that you keep summing as you go on. Okay, let's use this example to illustrate compound interest. The question says that Tammy deposited $2,000 in a time deposit account. The account pays a compound interest of 5% per annum. Find the total interest accumulated and the amount on her account after 5 years. Now, because this is a long process, I am going to work with it for 3 years for purposes of quickly getting the formula for you, and we concentrate on how to use the formula. Okay, just like we previously learned, the keywords remain the same. The amount you start with is still the principal, P. The interest rate, 5% per annum, is still there, so we have that as the interest rate. I'm going to abbreviate it with a small r, and we still have time. Once again, our time we are going to use 3 years. Okay, in the first year, Tammy would have an amount on her account which is from principal plus interest. Okay, remember, interest is a percentage of the principal. So call this amount number 1 because it's from the first year. So we'll have principal 2,000 plus interest, which is 5% of 2,000. Now, because my target is to also get a formula, I'm going to work with this concurrently. So to get a formula, okay, so my amount in the first year would be principal plus interest, which is R times principal. If I factorize this, I factorize out the P, I have P into 1 plus R. This is our amount in the first year. Let me calculate this to get a figure. If I press this on a calc, I'll have 2,000 plus this is 100. So our amount would be $2,100. That is at the end of the first year. Now let's proceed to the second year. Now at the end of the second year, we will have an amount 2. Now, like we mentioned earlier, the amount from year 1 becomes the principal for the second year. So in this case, our principal is going to be 2,100. This is like the very important point. Your amount from the first year becomes the principal in the second year. So my amount 2 is still going to be principal plus, it's going to be principal plus interest. So, but remember, I'm using a new principal, so this would be 2,100 plus 5% of 2,100. And this is going to give us, when you press it on your calc, it's going to give us $2,205. Okay, that would be our amount at the end of the second year. Now, for purposes of generating the formula, let me write this one on this side. So I would have that my amount at the end of the second year is going to be the new principal, which is the amount from the first year over here. So this is P into 1 plus R plus the interest, which is our rate, times the principal, which is this principal for this year, which is 1 plus R. When I factorize this, I will have P into 1 plus R squared. At the end of the second year, this would be the amount. Okay, lastly, at the end of the third year, let's look at the third year. So if this is our third year, our principal is going to be the amount from the second year. Okay, so our principal is going to be the amount from the second year, which is $2,205. So our amount at the end of the third year, A3, is going to be principal plus interest, and this would be A2, which is 2,205 plus 5% of 2,205. When you press this on a calculator, you are going to have 2,315.25. These are dollars. Now with money, we round off to 2 decimal places. 2 decimal places. Okay? Good. Now, again, for purposes of my formula, my amount 3 is going to be my amount 2, the principal for the third year, plus the interest, which is a percentage of amount 2. So this is going to be, if I copy up my amount 2, it was P into 1 plus R squared plus R times P into 1 plus R squared. If I simplify this, that's factoring out P into 1 plus R squared, I'll end up with P into 1 plus R cubed. Okay, this is the amount at the end of a third year. Now, because I cut it short, we would have been continuing to the fourth year and the fifth year, but we are stopping on the third year. Okay, our question would have been, find the total interest accumulated and the amount on her account at the end of 3 years. So at the end of 3 years, Tammy would have an amount of 2,315.25. Now I've gone through all of this, like first year, second year, and third year, to show you or to explain how compound interest works. But ideally, if we are solving a question, we would use the formula. Now let's use the formula and see how it works. So amount 3, I would have calculated straight away, because our formula currently is P into 1 plus R to power 3. Remember, R is a percentage, so I can write it as R over 100 to power 3. If I go back, my principal, original principal, was 2,000, my rate 5%. So I have 2,000 into 1 plus 5 over 100 to power 3. This is the same as 2,000 into 1 plus, it's faster if you write this as a decimal, 1 plus 0.05 to power 3. So I can write it straight away as 2,000 into 1.05 to power 3. When I press that on my calculator, I get, let me pick up my calculator. I will start by pressing the 1.05. You need to remember where you find this button. On some calculators, it is X with a box on top, whereas on others is X to power Y. So that is to power 3, then times 2000, you get a 2315.25 straight away. What does this mean? I went through all of this to explain how compound interest looks like, but when we are solving questions, we use the formula. Okay, so what is the formula for compound interest? Compound interest has a formula that amount at the end of the period of time is equal to your principal into 1 plus your rate to power t. Or some textbooks, in some places you're going to find this to power n, where a is the amount, p is the principal, and n is the time. The whole of this is the rate. Okay, the whole of this is the rate. Now, your time and rate have to have the same component. If your rate is per month, then your time is going to be in months. If your rate is per annum, then your time is going to be in years. This formula, some key things to note: the formula calculates amount. The formula calculates amount. If you want to calculate interest, you have to use the relationship that amount equals to principal plus interest. So in this case, your interest would be amount minus principal. For example, our question had also required us to calculate the total interest accumulated. So the total interest would be the amount, which is 2315.25 minus 2000, which was our principal. So the interest becomes 315.25. Now this is the concept of compound interest. This is the formula for calculating compound interest. In the next video, I will work out some examples.